live. I didn't even mean to.
That's okay.
To answer your question, Jake, it should just it should basically walk you through it. It's you log into your accounts and link them through the link that I sent you.
Okay, hold on a second.
Anyway, I guess we'll jump right into the intro since my dumbass hit go live before we were ready.
It's saying Jesse Nadu can't do the stream.
Conrad should mute their phones. Conrad should mute their phones, please. We're getting a lot of echo.
What was
Comrade Rob?
what was that you were just saying, comma?
It's saying Jesse Nadu is trying to find this stream. Hold on.
I mean, I literally just hit go live, so it wouldn't have been there like 30 seconds ago. I guess I'll take this moment to announce that our YouTube channel is no more. No specific reasons were given, but I would assume that it would be to the anti-capitalist nature of our program. So we are on Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter currently. If we want to just like go around the room and everybody kind of introduce yourself, I feel like that's a good way to start.
Hi, I'm Kama Patel. I have a degree in criminal justice and a Juris Doctorate from Northeastern, and I've consulted with police departments across Massachusetts, specifically around Boston and the South Suburban Boston. And I am here, and I'm very grateful to be here. Anyone
Who's
else?
next?
Shaka should go next.
All power to the people. This Chairman Shaka Zulu, the New African Black Panther Party. I'm here specifically to represent our ideological and political line as a represent to pig terrorism in this community. I'm a revolutionary and the struggle is my life. All power to the people.
Power to the people.
Jake, you want to go next?
To have a young Lord Comrade go next.
I don't know if anybody else is here. So I'm Alyssa. I'm the Minister of Defense for the Tri-State New England chapter of New Area Lords.
All power to the people. Tom, you want to go next?
You want me to go?
Yeah.
I'm Tom Watts, original White Panther. I'm an elder advisor to New African Black Panther Party, White Panther Party, and the Rainbow Coalition.
All power. Jake?
Jake Hansberry, I'm chairman of the White Panther Party.
And then Kat?
Hi, I'm Kat. I'm Secretary General of the White Panther Party. Nice to be here.
Glad that you're here. Captain Africa, you want to go next? I don't know if you're talking, you're muted. No? Okay. Anybody else want to introduce themselves, or should we just dive right in? Actually, I see Zombie just joined. If you want to introduce yourself.
I did. Thank you. I'm Zombie. I'm a member of Guardian Rebellion.
Hell yeah.
All power.
Is Paul on here?
All power to the people. Yeah, I'm here. Deputy Chairman of the Young Lords in Illinois. All power to the people.
All power to the people. All power to the people.
All right. So I guess like let's get this underway by I'll pass the mic off to Kama, and we'll just kind of like give an overview of the past few decades in police funding, and in respect to directly to the funding. As funding increases, so do the number of people killed by police every year. So we're going to talk about some of the statistics behind that.
All right, the statistics of police funding. Okay, so well, let's go to 2022 alone. And just to let you know, there's a couple people who are on the site who can't get to the video, just to let you know, for some reason. I'm getting messages.
Yeah, it's because that video is linked to our YouTube. I'm actually in the process of trying to fix that with a different feed right now.
Okay, hold on one second. Let me just let them know. Hold on.
Yeah, if you can have them just go to our Facebook page, they should be in there.
They said that they're trying to, but they aren't able to get to the video for some reason. So I think Comrade Rob is fixing it now.
Yeah, I just hit update. Have them refresh the page and it should be there. Or have them refresh probably in like 30 seconds and it should be there.
Hold on.
I apologize to everyone for us working out the kinks on this. We did not expect our YouTube channel to be removed the same day as this event. Part of me really thinks that's not a coincidence.
No, it's probably not. We're not, we're volunteers. We don't get funding. We don't get donations from corporations, 1%ers, or politicians, of course. So, hold on. She found it. Awesome. Great. Okay. So police funding, let me go into that. Let's go into 2022 right now. Okay. After all that's happened in the past just 5 years alone, George Floyd, Breonna, let's go with the three big cases. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. We go to right now, Tyree Nichols, now at Tortuguita. We are looking at funding by Biden going to $37 billion nationwide. Now, at his presidential election ceremony, he thanked the Black community. It's interesting that he thanks the Black community with more cops. Let me go into the percentage of, okay, hold on one second. First of all, the white community, okay, the white majority is 75.8% of the population, correct? So when it comes to traffic stops, the Black population is about 12%, 13% of the population, right? They are 63% more likely to be stopped, and they drive 16% less than the white majority. So taking that into account, they're 95% more likely to be stopped at traffic stops and 115% more likely to be searched than the white majority. Over the years, Reagan put through Reagan's presidency, 2 terms, $180 billion, supposedly, according to NYU, and we're talking about the 80s. The war on drugs was in fact a war on the young Black community. Certain statutes that were passed during his administration, felony murder statute, was also a war on the Black community. The reason why is because nonviolent marijuana offenses, people were going away for decades, 40 years at times. This was in fact a concerted effort by his administration to basically keep the classes where they're at. During his administration also, the Black community statewide, prior to this, state universities were almost free as far as tuition. Once he was in office, state universities started implementing tuitions. So there is a causal connection between more cops, money, and a division of the classes. And that is directly linked to our system that is in place right now, I believe, which is capitalism. Specifically, if we're getting into, so that's funding, and I went through the percentages of how the Black community is stopped for traffic stops. And I have specific questions that people have sent me, but we can go over that in a little bit. Did you guys have any other questions regarding funding, statistics? First of all, crime rate has been steadily going down in the past 20 years. And that is not a correlation to the increased presence of police. In fact, there is no correlation, according to NYU, between increased presence of police and the decrease in crime. The correlation between decrease in crime has to do directly with poverty levels. If we decrease poverty, if we get more money into communities for these programs that hopefully are not Band-Aids, we will see a decrease in crime. The reason why specifically also NYU and NIH has specifically reasoned as to why there's more of a presence of cops in certain communities is directly related to property and real estate and propaganda. The more Black families move into places like, for instance, in Michigan, Lily White, Livonia, where I live, you can look me up anyways, it doesn't really matter. Where I live, for instance, there's a certain amount that is acceptable of people of color. This specifically relates to the Black community. Above that certain level, it's been seen that through propaganda, a lot of the white communities in these suburbs do what's called a white flight. They leave these once very white communities once there's a level of the Black community that is actually seen on the streets, in the schools. This is directly related basically to the increase in cops and real estate. And real estate prices specifically supposedly go down, even though the Black community in these previous white communities don't commit the crimes. They are just trying to live their lives in these communities. So in order to stop that from happening, for instance, in a very close town of mine called Livonia, it is expected, even though the Livonia crime rate has gone down, they're still going to be hiring 16 new cops. Why? Traffic stops. So basically, that's an overview of what I've seen. And then, of course, I've got like 20 questions from people from all over the world, actually. And the whole world is watching Cop City. It's not just America. It's not just North America. It is the entire world right now. And a lot of the older population and libs and people who are privileged don't even know what's going on in Cop City right now. So I'll hand it over to whoever wants to speak next.
Chairman Jake's got his hand up. You're muted, Jake.
Yeah, sorry. So related to the white flight situation, there's one aspect that I think that often gets neglected, and it's not that everything that you said was awesome, but as far
I don't take anything personally. Don't worry.
Right. It's just in the argument about white flight, one thing that's always left out is the fact that the specific the class that this applies to is often petty bourgeois. Most of these communities are middle class white communities, and the property values are obviously, in order for them to go down, right, because of the presence of a Black person, with the crime rates, with the crime rate being involved as well, these kinds of things, it has to be a petty bourgeois neighborhood. It has to be a petty bourgeois community. So oftentimes in relation to that phenomena, what you're really seeing is kind of this management class, this mom and pop class within the white community that is, they're desperately trying to cling on to these values that have been instilled in them from this capitalist superstructure that we have. So
Well, let me say,
that's one thing I don't want people to lose sight of is the actual class, the demographic of class on the ground in these neighborhoods. You know, it's not to say that there are, you know, my point is to say that when Black people move into a poor white neighborhood, it doesn't make the property value go down.
correct.
You know what I mean? And it doesn't make white people leave either, because they can't leave. They're economically restricted to that area. So these are just two factors that I wanted to point out here. When you're talking about overall the structure, the statistics that we have in this country, most of those neighborhoods that you're seeing white flight happen in, that's a predominantly middle to upper class area, just because of economic reasons. People are economically confined.
Agreed. And it's also very systemic as far as the propaganda that has been perpetuated. This is related to banks, any kind of credit institution. Appraisers also will appraise a home that is close to Black neighborhoods as less than their actual value. This is, I believe, a very systemic problem that is infiltrated all of America, if not the world. So, but I agree with you, Comrade Chairman Jake.
Tom's got his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, when we're talking about the Black community, we're also talking about Native Americans, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, all of the oppressed peoples. In fact, I think the statistics are the worst for the Native Americans. And when we talk about white, like Jake was pointing out, there's a class divide between poor whites and the middle class and upper class. You know, a lot of the Appalachian people are as victimized as anybody else when it comes to the police, you know.
Most definitely, but they are segregated also onto reservations, many of them. And they live in very poor conditions as well. So that's partially why their traffic stops are less. And also they, unlike the white majority, they also do not drive as much as the white majority, as I had pointed out, as far as the Black population. But BIPOC, for sure, Black, Indigenous, people of color are Hispanics, Indigenous and Black, as I said, so BIPOC for sure, as a whole are affected.
So in the comments, somebody said separate but equal never went away. It simply hid behind coded language. And yeah, I think that's
It
true.
hid behind criminal laws that were criminal types of laws like felony murder, marijuana offenses. And when you take away young Black men from a community, you're taking away a part of the family. You're taking away the wage earners, a lot of them. You're forcing the mother to be the matriarch, and the only, I see war god here. But you're taking away basically the major wage earners and the people who actually, you're basically breaking up a family. And that's exactly what has happened in the marginalized Black communities. Are we still?
Yeah.
Really quickly, can I just add something to that analysis that Tom and I provided on that one statistic? It's that by and large, within the poor white community, there isn't a class incentive for racism. Because it's not a material issue to you. You're more concerned with paying your bills, keeping your lights on, than you are with hating your neighbor. And it's not to say that there aren't racists in the poor white community. It's just that it comes out of a different tendency. Some of it is a lumpen tendency where you get street gangs who are all poor people who are just trying to survive by and large. And they group together in a form of collective struggle. It's oftentimes counter to their actual class interests, but the point is it tends to be grouped, depending on where it is in the country, it tends to be grouped upon racial lines. And that's where a lot of the racial tensions tend to come from. So in the poor white community, I know out here, one of the main set of neighborhoods is in Gary, and the white communities in Indiana, Northwest Indiana, view Gary as this crime-ridden place full of Black people. And they see all the crimes happening in their community, and they always want to attribute it to them. What they don't realize is that the crime that's coming out of Gary has to do more with the lumpen tendencies. It has to do with the collective struggle to survive. It also had to do with that white flight, because Gary used to be a middle-class area. And when the mill started to close down its, a lot of its operations and started offshoring, job market declined. The white people who live in Gary left that city, and the city went bankrupt. So it came under, and there is a white population in Gary too, but you won't find whites in Gary who hate Black people. I mean, it's just, if you do, it's they're living on the edge. They're living in a swampland or something. You know what I mean? And that just has to do with this fact that these people don't have an incentive to feel that way. You know, it's immaterial to them. Whereas somebody who is rich has far more of an incentive to not only hate them based on some kind of notion of biological superiority, but on some kind of notion of an anti-socialist perspective. You know what I mean? It's far easier to prevent unionization in a workplace you control if you could create a racial division, for example. And that's just one way that this is used. So I just wanted to point that out too, is to try to nuance that perspective a little bit more. But I'd much rather want to hear from our new African and Puerto Rican comrades here.
Well, can I just make one point, comrade, is that the biggest difference between Black poor and white poor is the opportunity. It was a concerted effort to keep the Black poor segregated from the white poor. White poor across the nation has access to be able to apply to different communities, such as here in West Bloomfield, and are given housing at lower costs and are able to have access to the educational system in West Bloomfield, for instance, whereas the Black poor has not. So that is like the biggest difference that I've seen as far as what I've read in regards to both races of poor. But go ahead, sorry.
Does anybody else want to speak, or maybe?
All power to the people. It's Chairman Shaka Zulu of the New African Black Panther Party. First, I want to state that I don't think when it comes to pig terrorism in our community that poverty was a beachhead from which the pig organized the police against us. From the very inception of this country, the pig has been set up as an instrument or a hired gun to make sure that those in power remain in power and those at the bottom stay at the bottom. In 1673, I may be off a few years, you had a Bacon Rebellion in the South, where this guy was upset that he had a little bit of land and he wanted more land from the Berkeley government at the time, and he couldn't get it. So he organized some indigenous people, some African people, and some poor whites into an army in which they attacked Virginia. And they almost succeeded until he got sick and died and the struggle phased out. But the point here is that when Blacks came to this country, they came here specifically for economic purpose. And we need to keep that in mind. I don't think white flight, I don't think poverty per se have any kind of major reason for why Blacks in this country are at the bottom. It's the fact that the ruling class has a special hate reserved for Blacks all over the world because of the guilt, the guilt conscious they have, or not everyone, but those who have a sympathetic view to the crimes they committed against the people. And so in order to maintain their dominance around the world, especially here in the United States, the belly of the beast, you have to have a force in place to divide the masses and to keep the masses in check and to monitor and surveil the masses. And one of those forces was racism, which is a byproduct of capitalism. Racism is not the reason why we're poor. Racism is an expression of pseudo ideology to keep the masses divided. We're poor because we are at the bottom of this society. We have always been at the bottom of this society since 1619, when 20 Blacks were injected into Jamestown, Virginia. And so we have to look at it from a historical perspective, because if we look at it from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, when neoliberalism came into play, all the way up until the war on the poor, the mass incarceration system. If we just look at it from that perspective, we'll be doing ourselves a disservice, because we won't have the full picture. We won't have an all-sided perspective. The source of policing, not just here in the United States, but around the world, stem directly from the aggressive desire of those in power to maintain that power at any expense. They don't have 800 military bases loaded, ready, and to go on air, land, and sea, pointed at China, pointed at Iran, and the rest of the non-white world, because it's a good thing to do. They have it there because guns, bullets, police, armies represent the interests of those in power. And in this society right here, African people, or new African people, are neo-colonial people. We are a people who have been rejected and subjected to the boot of our enemy. And so we believe that the statistics is good, the analysis around how the pig forces are militarized and what monies go to what police forces are real good. And we need that analysis as we go into battle with ideas. But ultimately it boils down to understanding that the police in our community represent an occupation force. There's no reform there. There's no reasoning there. There's no sympathy we should have for this system, because it represents an antithetical way of life. It's poisonous, it's a vampire, it's a millstone around the necks of the masses of the people, whether you're in the brown community, Black community, indigenous community, or the oppressed New African community. For us, like the original Black Panther Party said, the only good pig is a dead pig to feed to the masses who are hungry. And we live by that. It is a good mantra, and we should uphold it as a banner to how we see the police force. All power to the people.
Chairman, I just had a question. This is a question that was posed to me. Why do you believe that the white privileged class really wants is comfortable with, for instance, $37 billion being put into cops nationwide by President Forsyth? Biden.
All power to the people. Good question. Well, first, let me say Jim Crow Biden didn't fool us. It didn't fool anyone in the revolutionary movement that we are associated with. We know he's an advocate of more police. In fact, he was responsible for calling us super predators in '94, along with Hillary Clinton, when they described why they want more police and prisons in this country. But I think the white community, those who are in privileged positions, have a tendency to accept what their leaders say on face value.
Exactly.
They have this tendency to look at the rest of the world through the lenses of their leaders, because historically the system has worked for them. The system has been an instrument by which they were able to keep their plantation, keep their cars, keep their corporate jobs, keep their prestige, and most importantly, keep this country connected to the capitalist orbit. And so privileged classes will only break and asunder when the movement on the street is powerful. If you look at how revolutions around the world arrive, they arrive from this perspective. When the grassroots, when the armed forces in the communities that are being oppressed and exploited organize the masses of the people, and their strength, and they are in the streets, and you see this visible mass of people in the streets, the ruler of the petty bourgeois class then say, wow, every day I go into that community to sell my wares at the store, or every day I open up my office as a doctor, or every day I go into that community to teach education. This is the petty bourgeois class. And so they have to begin to now consider putting their weight and influence behind the upsurge of the community, because the petty bourgeoisie going to hinge their bet to whatever is strong. Whatever the political wind is blowing, that's where the privileged classes are going to go. And so it's important to understand, just because the privileged classes are advocating for more police and more repressive mechanisms in our community, it doesn't mean anything when the vast majority of our oppressed brothers and sisters in a multiracial sense are organized as revolutionary Panther towns, or revolutionary Palante towns, or revolutionary hillbilly towns. It doesn't matter what the pig get, because the power of the people is stronger than the enemy's technology. All power to the people.
So just one question, Chairman. As chairman of the Black Panther Party, what do you think as far as, first of all, how do you define petty bourgeois for the people who are not accustomed to that term? And number two, how do you feel about, for instance, actually just answer that question, because I think a lot of people who are older who are watching this don't understand that term at all. What is the financial, you know, where do we fall finance-wise as far as a per family capita earning income when you talk about petty bourgeois?
All power to the people. No, that's a great question. I remember when I was sitting in the enemy prison a few years ago, and Oprah Winfrey had a show on class. And she asked a few people in the audience, what is class to you? And some people said, well, having good fingernails, that's class. Taking showers every day, that's class. Being respectable, that's class. But what that showed me in my little infant stage of revolutionary development was that America has no clue what class is, what class struggle is, what class oppression is, what class exploitation is. And there's an explanation for why that is the case. But I think when you talk about petty bourgeois, it have to be defined according to external contradictions or material contradictions in each community. For us, in our community, we are at the bottom of society, poor Black folk. So when someone in our community open up a business and they don't use those resources to empower the masses, and they take that bag of money out of town at sundown, then we're going to call them an exploiter. We're going to call them a petty bourgeois exploiter, because they have shown in practice they're more concerned about being greedy and taking that money to another town than empowering the people. So for us, African people, a petty bourgeois person is anyone that is more concerned about padding their own pockets than empowering the people. And they use the rhetoric of empowerment to hide their dirty deeds. This is what the petty bourgeoisie does. It hides their dirty deeds by saying we support police. Let me give you a good example. When George Floyd exploded across the George Floyd rebellion, exploded across the country, you had 23 days of national resistance against one specific entity in this country, and that was the pig force. Never in the history of the United States have you had 23 days of multiracial resistance against the police in this country. There have always been Blacks who had to fight with allies against the police. But when George Floyd rebellion occurred, you see whites in rural areas walking in the streets, coming out of the cornfields saying, Black Lives Matter. You saw indigenous brothers and sisters leaving the reservations saying indigenous and Black Lives Matter. You saw our Latino brothers all over the world saying that their lives matter along with Black Lives Matter. And they marched against the pig force because all of them were affected by that. And Congress, who are the representatives of the ruling class, they put on their kente clause. They took a knee in Congress and said, we will never allow something like this to take place again. Now, for us who are clear on who the enemy was, we saw this as a subterfuge, smoke and mirrors, as a pacification tool. And this is what the enemy used to pacify us. So for us, we have to make distinctions, comrade, where we at with respect to the class structure in our own communities. I would imagine that the young lords have a different analysis as it pertains to the petty bourgeoisie in their community, and the same way with the white comrades, because we all have external contradictions or material contradictions that are fundamentally different. And so that's how we look at a petty bourgeois person. Someone who is more concerned with making a dollar bill rather than using a dollar bill to empower the people so they can become agents of change and enter political life as agents of change. All power to the people.
Power to the people. And just one more question, Chairman Zula. I had a question about when we talk about revolutions in history. Do you agree that we don't need a majority of the people, correct? We need a certain critical mass to come into the streets. Right now, we have in total, including police, including National Guard, including the military, 4 million people, correct? So critical mass has been shown throughout history to be 3.5%. So in this country, 3.5% critical mass would be about 12 million people. So basically my question is, what do you think about critical mass versus majority? Because there seems to be this weird dream fairy tale that we need a majority of Americans, and we don't.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I think history bores out here that a small, determined, indomitable spirit can serve to incentivize people to get mobilized in the street. And let me just give you 1 or 2 examples, and I'll be brief because I know there's other comrades on this panel, and I would love to hear from them. I remember reading up on Pedro Albizu Campos, who is one of the great heroes of mine from Puerto Rico. And this cat was fiery. This cat was rejected, outcast, and spat upon by the privileged class in Puerto Rico. And so he went to the countryside along with the macheteros and other elements, and they began to organize there. And they made a lot of mistakes early on, but they didn't give up. It was only a few of them, no more than 50. But after a few years, with Pedro being captured, thrown in prison, and then released and ultimately murdered by the United States in prison, the nationalist movement exploded across the country. In 55, you had an uprising. They had to call and give them a fake independence. And that's when Munoz came to power. So what I'm saying to you, comrade, is that if you look at the Montgomery bus boycott here in the United States, and I'm just using that as an example, I could give you 1,000 more, but look at what Martin Luther King did at 55. Here he went into a population that was beaten down, that was mowed down, that was hemmed in, that was told they were nothing. They were 3/5 of a human being. They couldn't read and write. This is what the population of people Martin Luther King and the LCLC injected themselves into. And it was only a few of them. It was only a few reverends when they went to Montgomery. And no one wanted to hear what they had to say. But they started the Montgomery bus boycott, and 365 days later, they were able to end segregation in the interstate system there. So what I'm saying to you, comrade, is that as long as you got someone that is on the same page, that ideologically is on the same page with you, that have that indomitable spirit, that is brave, and that love the people, you can always start an organization, and that organization captures the spirit and love of the people to take on those in power. Like a good example will be our Rainbow Coalition. When we first started this thing, it was only a few of us. We started it here in the city of North New Jersey. In 2021, we brought the Young Lords together and the New African Black Panthers and our white allies. And it was only a few of us, and we was coming out of a very, very tense situation at the time. But now, if you look at the Rainbow Coalition, we got 8 organizations, I think 9 now, and we're constantly growing and developing. And if we can leverage that power collectively across the country in a multiracial revolutionary sense, we'll put ourselves in a position to begin to bring Babylon to its knees. We can attack the dog from the inside, and we could watch him bark and whine as he dies. That's the most important thing we recognize. Our multiracial unity can be leveraged to attack the dog enemy system. And so that's my point on that. And I want to open it up to other comrades. All power to the people.
And just to add to that what you actually pointed about, MLK only had 38% of the population agreeing with him, willing to march. AIDS movement only had 15% of the population at that time. And we were able to shut down Wall Street in 1987. So definitely completely agree as far as critical mass. And I appreciate Power,
let me just say this, and I'll let the other comrades chime in. I remember, comrade, when the AIDS movement exploded in 88, 89. I was very young then, but I saw y'all comrades putting the work in the streets. I saw y'all comrades disrupting senators and institutions. And I think that was a most militant phase in which healthcare workers, along with activists, took on the system in a very militant manner. So I just want to appreciate and acknowledge the work that you did with those comrades when y'all begin to break pull back the cover on the AIDS epidemic and expose it for what it was.
I appreciate that. All power to the people. I appreciate that so much. Thank you, Chairman.
Tom has the floor after, if Shaka's done.
I'm done, Conrad. All power.
All power.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that underscore what Chairman Chaka was saying, that in the words of Fred Hampton, it's a class struggle, goddammit.
All power to the people.
When they put more cops on the street, it's an act of class war. When they put more military around the world, it's an act of class war. America is no longer just a country, it's an empire, and it's an empire that stretches all around the world. May have a huge military, but that military is spread pretty thin around the world. Most of it's in foreign bases. We have to unite our struggle, not just the Black, Brown, Native, and other people here in the territorial United States. We have to unite with the people of our class and the other oppressed classes like the peasantry, all around the world into a powerful movement that targets the imperialist ruling class and is prepared to go all out to overthrow them. You're talking about a minority of critical mass. In the American Revolution, there was never a point when more than a third of the people supported the revolution. But you know, and you look at the Russian Revolution. The proletariat in Russia was probably less than 10% of the population. But in alliance with the peasantry and with the soldiers who were fed up with dying in the First World War, they were able to overthrow the Tsar and the bourgeoisie. When Mao started in China, I think they had like 20-some members when they formed the Communist Party. You know, by 1949, they had, you know, millions and millions of people behind them in an organized army, and were able to seize power. It doesn't, the masses make the revolution, and there has to be a condition in which that the masses see that the system in power is not going to get any better. It's not going to do anything for them other than put its brother on its neck. And it has to believe that there's a revolutionary force that has the people's interests at heart and is willing to go all the way and do whatever is necessary to win. And petty bourgeoisie, well, that divides into two. Like the upper section of the petty bourgeoisie, they're so close to being rich, you know, that they think they are the rich, you know. The rich figure you got to have at least $1 million.
I think he's frozen. Okay.
Breaking up, Tom. You're breaking up pretty bad. We can't even hear you.
Yeah.
I wanted to add as far as the marginalized communities, transgender, non-binary, LGBTQAI, but I wanted to specifically say transgender and non-binary as well. Transgender is going to take a hit. It already has.
Transgender, non-binary as well.
Comrades, can you mute your phone, please? Can y'all mute your phone, please?
Transgender is going to take a hit. It already. Comrades, can you mute your phone, please?
Oh, wow. Who is that?
Go ahead, comrade, sister.
I think we lost him.
No, you good. They muted their phones. Go ahead. You was asking a question.
Was I asking a question? Who was asking the question?
You was.
Oh, that's true. I wanted to add, it wasn't specifically a question, but I wanted to add that transgender and non-binary are going to take a hit as well. Transgender community has already taken hit as far as violence in this country. Last year, 58 transgender humans were murdered just for being alive, and police, nobody's covering that. Nobody's even investigating those murders. So
No.
I just wanted
and
to...
fascists around the country have been specifically targeting them lately.
For sure. And the Jewish American community is also going to take a hit as well.
Yeah. Comrade Candy said two-spirited. Like,
I would love to hear what the Brown Beret comrade have to say, Candy. And then we should invite the young Lord Paul to come on and speak. See what their positions are on this police pig terrorism thing.
all power to the people.
Can I ask you, Comrade Jake, Chairman Jake, how old are you? I just want people to know how young you are. Because it's inspiring. I say this because he has so much knowledge behind him, and a lot of his generation, Gen Z, really agree with him. In fact, my daughter and son wanted to be here to watch. They're going to watch the live. When I told them about him, they were even more inspired. I think that. Well, you continue, Chairman Jake.
Well, I'm 23, but I don't really think that's as, I I like that that could be an inspiring thing. But I don't. It's not as relevant to the
For sure.
reality, you know.
Yeah.
The only thing that I wanted to ask is that we make a little bit of time to hear Kat's story about the repression and the brutality that was going on in Indianapolis, and also wanted to remind everybody that about the case that Kwame wanted us to mention
Yes.
in Indianapolis. So those are the only two things I had to say. Yeah, as far as the inspiration goes, I like that I can make that impact in the world. I don't think it's all that relevant. I think that anybody can make a revolutionary transformation. They could become someone totally different. They could become their opposite, at any age, so.
It's very humbling to hear that. But go ahead.
Would Deputy Chairman Paul or Comrade Candy like to say anything? Or any other Brown Beret people who are in here? Honestly, there's a lot of people in this Zoom room. I'm not sure who's all who.
The case in Indianapolis, what year was that case?
It was 2022, wasn't it?
2022, yeah. I don't think a lot of people know about it.
It was April 25th, 2022. His name is Herman Wheatfield III. But if the Brown Berets or New Era Young Lord comrades like to speak first, and then I can say a little bit about the Herman Wheatfield case.
Thank you, comrade. I was going to wait until you were done, Kat. But I was just going to say the reason why I added Two-Spirited to the list of folks that are being attacked right now is because we throw around a lot of these acronyms. The LGBTQA2+ community is taking a hit. But here in my community, it's more about, it's still based on that class, obviously, and a lot of academics and students in college, unfortunately, are also kind of falling into this. We have this university here is on the Killarney lands of the Dene people. And so we have a huge population of unsheltered folks that don't even have the ability to express if they're two-spirited or not, because the LGBTQA+ has taken over, and it's predominantly white petty bourgeois students that are leading that movement here in this community. And so then they're not acknowledging that they're on stolen indigenous lands, that it's occupied lands, and the police are targeting them consistently. Even with our policies, they created the like, you can't be homeless. So if you're in a tent or you're caught sleeping at the bus station or anything, you're going to be picked up and arrested. And then there's no repercussions even in the court system for them to even say, hey, guess what? I happen to be sleeping on my own lands, because that's just invisible in the court system as it is. And then the people around them that are doing what I call an oppression Olympics, it's, well, okay, we can't talk about trans folks and the violence that they're experiencing in this community, because again, it's still a lot of those trans folks that are predominantly white and petty bourgeois are also implementing the harm and violence towards our indigenous brothers and sisters on the streets. And then it becomes really confusing for folks to even get a platform, whether it's in city government council or even in some of the, because we do serve the people and things like that. But they come to us and they're just like, hey, how do we have our cases heard when we're two-spirited, which is radically different than the other parts of that acronym. And people aren't willing to take the time because, us brown people have been invisible in so many ways that it's part of that manufactured disunity among us, right? And so then we have a hard time, and then some of it plays into that Olympics around, well, who's being killed and why? And then I like what Chairman Shaka was talking about in terms of the co-optation, if you will, of certain slogans. They've been devalued. They've been talked about, like Black Lives Matter. And then I saw Natives Lives Matter and this and that. And then was a way for the White Lives Matter movement to come out. And so then the police are here, they're sweeping all of that under the rug, obviously, because their balas, their bullets come first, and then they ask the questions and cover up later. And so that is always so huge because we're not taking time to really understand what it means. What if you're trans and two-spirited? These are, you know, things that like a lot of the petty bourgeois around here are not willing to even stop and talk about because they don't want complexity. So I was just throwing that in there, and I'm interested to hear what everyone else is saying. All power to the people.
All power to the people. All power to the people. If I could just interject, comrade, this Chairman Shaka, first, let us be clear that we uphold the statement that was released in 1971 by Huey P. Newton on gays and the liberation movement and the women's liberation movement. We believe that we have to look at the trans community through the lens of class struggle, that those in power who are advocating for the human rights of gays represent a class interest. They are part of the upper productive system, and they want to do what they did with feminism. They want to meld it close to the state. They want to make sure that if there's any advocacy for the LGBTQ, it be done within the lenses of Congress, and that they come up with rules and regulations that prescribe their humanity. And we say tactically, that's a good thing. Everybody should be afforded political, economic, social, and cultural rights. But when we make analysis of the LGBT community, we have to be clear that some of these folks are in the lap of the enemy. Some of these folks are our enemy. In fact, every time they organize some kind of event, the local political structures around LGBTQ, witness who's riding those cars that come through. They work for the corporate power structure. They work for the local political structures. They are incentivized to come out there because of the dollar bill. So when we make an analysis of the LGBTQ community, we have to be clear that we have some enemies there and we have some friends there. And we have to be able to unite the friends, isolate the right, and win over the uncertain. That's the best way in which we should deal with our brothers and sisters, a part of the LGBT community. Because I'll be damned if I make a blanket statement saying I support the Koch brothers who happen to, and I know they don't, but happen to support LGBTQ. Or let's say on the other side, Warren Buffett say, well, you know, I support it, so let's have a press conference with the Black Panthers because we all agree that LGBTQ should be given some rights or given all their rights. I know those folks are a part of the rightist pendulum. They are our enemies. And class analysis, class struggle, class perspective give us that benefit that others don't have. And so I just wanted to be clear on that position. All power to the people.
Let me just add, being part of the queer community and also being part of the queer community in Detroit and Boston, I will say this. As far as the gentrification of Boston, for instance, which I watched happen, right now half of Boston is owned by the older white gay community. The transgender community, I don't know about the community we were speaking of just now, but in Detroit, in Ohio, around the nation, I agree with you. The Black cause has to come first, but the transgender community has taken a huge hit. I understand that when we talk about passers versus people who, the Black transgender community, for instance, when we talk about passers versus non-passers in the transgender community, people do want to fit in, people end up assimilating. That is somewhat of a problem, but this is not across the board to the transgender community. Speaking of myself, as my son is right now non-binary. He still goes by he, him. He is considering becoming trans. He is brown, but at the same time, him and his community, and this is anecdotal, of course, him and his community that he is with right now puts the Black cause first. So perhaps what you're seeing is something that has to do with community to community as far as the poor in relation to that. Many transgender cannot even hold down jobs or even get jobs that are in many communities around the nation due to the fact that there's a huge stigma against them, especially once the transgender humans who are going through gender affirming treatment. So I'm just coming from this point of view. I understand your experiences, Chairman, and I appreciate them. I'm just saying that for my anecdotal experience, many of the young transgender are actually seeing the Black cause as the biggest issue right now.
All power to the people. All power. I unite.
So I wanted to say that, you know, women's rights, for example, the transgender gay liberation movement, we can go on and on. A lot of these movements were supposed to have their rights afforded to them under the capitalist system. They were supposed to have their rights afforded to them through the capitalist revolution, overthrew the kings. What we see here is it splits into two, like Tom said. You've got one side of this movement who is very clearly advocating for human rights, civil rights, right, that should have been afforded to them, right? And then that's where it ends, right? And then there is a sliver of this struggle that sees that that is not where it ends. In fact, economic rights are actually more important. They highlight more human dignity. They highlight more of your human civil rights than you could ever get under a capitalist system. So I essentially, from what I see, you know, we have to support the movement that talks about how your economic rights are an extension of your human rights. So your right to collectively own the means of life, for example, right? That's a human right, right? And it ties into your identity. It ties into your place in the community. So I guess what I'm saying here is that there you know, there's two portions of that movement, and it's important that we find comrades, you know, the people who are in that revolutionized sliver of that movement to work with, try to uphold their view on this. And it would be excellent if we had you know, somebody who formally represents an organization from that sliver of that movement on this call today to talk about that. But you know, because they're brutalized by police all the time. You know, I mean, you could look back at history, the decades and decades of you know, people in the trans community, gay people, just openly being essentially lynched in, you know, all over the country. So you know, that's the aspect of this that we're going to miss out a little bit of. I mean, I'm sure there's one or two people here who could do some justice to that claim, but nobody, I guess, here that's explicitly fighting for that community, you know.
All right. Zombie wanted to address something that Chairman Shaka said, and then the floor will belong to Kat after that.
Yeah, I very much appreciate the conversation about the intersectionality. that we need to definitely pay attention to, but I'd like to circle back around, if I could, to something that Chairman Shaka said. He talked a little bit about the militarization that we're seeing with police departments around the country and around the world. And I think that this kind of hits close to home for me and my group, because some of our members were acquainted with and had done actions with Tort Manuel in the past. The indigenous echo warrior who was killed at Cop City. So what we have been seeing, and we do work very closely with other eco groups, what we have been seeing as far as the reaction of the police to those groups is that they are escalating their military tactics, and they're also escalating the way that they handle them afterwards. I believe that we're now up to like 16 of the protesters from Cop City have now been charged with domestic terrorism.
It's 19, but yeah.
Is it 9? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the escalation, and I know that in other countries, members of Just Stop Oil, Extinction Rebellion, many of them are being charged with these just out of bounds charges that have more to do with war crimes than protest. And I just kind of wanted to speak to that, because Chairman Shaka had brought up the militarization, and I think that's something that people have been worried about for a couple of decades. I mean, since 9/11, I can remember the people right after 9/11 that were so worried about the Patriot Act for this very reason, and people were calling them conspiracy theorists. And now we've circled around and it's come to fruition. And I think it's something that we really need to open our eyes and look at, and just, I don't know. I don't even know what to say. It's just, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. And that was the first thing I thought of when Chairman Shaka brought up the militarization. So I appreciate you guys letting me share that. All power to the people.
All power to the people. We appreciate you being on here. So next will be Comrade Kat. We're going to start talking about Herman Whitfield III. And then behind her will be Deputy Chairman Paul, and then Captain Africa.
I apologize. How do I put my hand up? I'll just put my hand up.
Actually, I'm not sure. I should know that.
It's down under reactions.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep. Sure,
I'll try and find it. Okay, let me see. Got it.
All right. Well, I just wanted to speak about IMPD specifically. So it's kind of going off subject a little bit because it's more specific. And that's the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. First, I'll talk about Herman Whitfield III, and I'll put the link to the family's page that they have all their demands and updates on. But his family called an ambulance for mental health crisis, and IMPD showed up and killed him, and they are fighting for justice for him right now. So that was that was April 25th in 2022. There's a whole campaign going on and volunteers are being taken if anyone would like to join in with that. I'd like to say that, IMPD just keeps getting more violent, and their funding, the review boards, the incident reports, those aren't helping at all. I mean, you can go back to like 2015, 2017, where they failed to internally review nearly half of their officer-involved shootings. And they had about 2 or 3 years where it was a steady same numbers, but since then it has increased. And then there's, back in 2020 when Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, right before that on May 6th, IMPD officer Joshua Mercer murdered Drejon Reed. And that was after there was a police pursuit, and then Officer Mercer decided to go on his own and chase Drejon Reed. And then 8 hours later, not even 2 miles apart, they also killed Mikhail Rose. And IMPD shows no accountability for these police brutality murders, not to their families, not to them themselves, not to the community. And I just think that is a very good thing to touch base on, is how they've gotten more funding, they've gotten review boards, but yet they still show no accountability. I mean, their Chief Taylor 2 weeks ago put out a statement about Tyre Nichols and how that they shouldn't, sorry, and my son is climbing shelves, that that should not be in the police force whatsoever, and that he is ashamed that these are police officers, but yet the one that's on his payroll, he shows no accountability for, and lets them murder people. And it just keeps getting worse. So right now, IMPD is not showing accountability. They get violent, and that's the whole country right now. But I'd like to touch base on the Herman Whitfield.
You're muffled.
And that there is an open police brutality case right now. And if you'd like to get involved, I will share the link.
Absolutely. I will be copying that link and putting it in the Facebook comments as well. All right, so is that all, or do you have more?
Well, my son is choosing that to be all right now, so
okay.
Others can go.
All right, that's fine. Deputy Chairman Paul, that brings it to you.
All right, all power to the people. So
all power to the people, all power to the people.
I first wanted to say, I thank Comrade Tom, for his comments to bring into this conversation that, we in the U.S. tend to look at everything as a black and white struggle. And a lot of other communities tend to get overlooked in this struggle and their contributions to the struggle. And so I thank you, Comrade Tom, for bringing that out, that these issues also are reflected in the brown community. And I say brown community because I don't really use the term Latino or Hispanic, because both of those terms were colonized terms given to us. Unfortunately, they have, I believe Chairman Shaka said that sometimes people adapt to the situations. And so, we've taken those terms Latino or Hispanic and tried to adapt to them and turn them into an identity to unify us. Unfortunately, unifying under a term that still strips our identity away from us really isn't the best way to go about it. So when I talk, I typically talk about the brown and Latino community. And so when we look at police, violence, the state sanctioned violence by the pigs, it's a violence that reflects on all of our communities. And again, we know and we see hashtag after hashtag. As we're speaking right now, we know that there's probably 2 new hashtags that we're going to hear about tomorrow or in the next day. And it's something that we really need to pay attention to. But when we speak We have to speak about it and speak about it in a way that brings unity to people. And so when I talk about, you know, the same struggle being in the Black and brown communities. When we just focus on one demographic of it, and this is what media is really good at, you know, when Black Lives Matters came out, they said that they covered the brown indigenous communities. However, because of the way it's written, media was able to use that and twist that and distort that to a division amongst the people, where people in the brown communities were like, well, that movement's for them, it's not for us. When damn well we knew that the movement was for both, you know? And so when we speak, we need to make sure that we speak on it so that there is no distorting by the media, distorting by the politicians and everybody else that wants to continue that divide between the Black and brown community. We see it all the time. And here in Chicago, that shit runs rampant. You know, 2 years ago, we had a killing in Humboldt Park of a young Puerto Rican male and his girlfriend, right after the Puerto Rican festival. The killing was perpetrated, it was gang related or street tribe related, because I don't like to use the term gang either, because again, that's a term that was given by the system. And if we know the history of gangs, we know that this history was based off of, you know, protection from the pigs, protection from white supremacists that would come in, burn our stores, torment our communities, beat our parents and stuff like that. So we have to remind ourselves of that. So we know that the killing was street tribe related, but we also know that the way the media portrayed it, because it was a dark-skinned brown person that could pass as if he was part of the Black community, they were trying to say, well, if Black Lives Matters, why are they killing us? And the media actually tried to perpetrate tensions in Humboldt Park between the Black and brown community. We've seen it again in the George Floyd uprising, where they sensationalized misunderstandings that happened in Little Village, trying to make it sound like the brown gangs, like the Latin Kings and the 2-6 and stuff like that, were intentionally targeting people from the Black community. And then they were amping people up in the Black community to respond in such with violence towards the brown community. So when we talk, we have to make sure that we don't, you know, perpetuate the concepts of it's only a black and white issue. We need to make sure that we talk about it as an us issue, and it then extends onto a class issue as well, because we know that just as many people in the Black and brown community that are killed, we may know names 10 times out of 10, we know the names of the people in the Black community that are killed. In the brown community, for every 15, 20 names that we have in the Black community, we may get one. And then in the white community, in the poor white community, we may get 0. I don't think off the top of our head, we may be able to name someone in the white community that was killed for the same reasons that someone in the Black or brown community was killed. And so we need to really talk about that, because what ends up happening is we just perpetuate the hate within our groups. And then, you know, we become like that echo chamber of, oh, you know, everybody in this community is like that, so we don't do this with them. We don't move, or we become oppressors of our own, right? And instead of fighting oppression, we fight it, but we're also oppressing other people in other communities. And that is where we need to really start drawing the line, because that makes us no better than the pig, no better than the state sanctioned violence that is already perpetuated by the system that we live in. I do also want to thank Chairman Shaka for his mention of Don Pedro and the independence movement in Puerto Rico. There's a quote by independentista that was Clemente Soto Velez, and he said, and I'll paraphrase it a little bit, but he was talking about the independence of Puerto Rico depends on the number of bullets in the pig's belt. Well, we could extend that to the nowadays and say our independence, the independence of the people here, depends on the number of clips or number of bullets in the pig's clip, you know. And when we start to look at it, we know that we outnumber the pigs. We know that we outnumber, even if they were to pull in the military and the National Guard, we know that an educated people will outnumber the masses of, you know, oppressors. And so that was just some of the stuff that was going on in my mind as we were talking. I will share something here in Chicago. I know we opened up also with statistics on police or pig sanctioned killings, and these are, I call them sanctioned killings because they don't have no repercussions. They don't face charges. Here in Chicago, the Chicago Police Department has a billboard that has a pig in a casket being carried out by fellow pigs, and it says, "Enough is enough." And the blatant audacity to put up a billboard like that in Black and brown communities when 2022 saw the highest rate of murders by the pigs is just shocking. And it really shows that they really don't give a fuck about any of us. Any of us on this call are, and anybody listening to us, are an easy target for them, and they don't care. But let a pig fall, and now enough is enough. And that really just pisses me off every time I see that billboard. And it's purposely only in Black and brown communities. I have not seen it in any prominent affluent neighborhoods here in Chicago. But if you go to the hood, you see that bullshit ass billboard up there in our face daily. And it's just, it's them taunting us because they know that they will continue to kill us, but yet they want us to feel sympathy for them. And we've seen it on social media as well with, you know, how many times have we gone onto social media and we see either a Black or brown pig on social media trying to humanize themselves and say, you know, not all of us are bad. We're, you know, we represent the community. Bullshit, you don't represent the community. And excuse my language, you know, if I'm swearing too much, but we know that you don't represent the community. The moment you put on that badge, you stop representing the community. You stop speaking for the community. And you could say that there's good pigs, but let's be honest, until they start fucking attacking their own pigs, they are just as guilty every time a trigger is pulled. Every cop is just as guilty because they knew that he would pull the trigger or that she would pull the trigger eventually. They knew that they would beat the shit out of somebody and kill them, and yet they did not do anything. So there are no good cops in my eyes, and that's all I'll say.
All power to the people.
All power
Captain
to the people.
All power to the people. All power to the people.
All power.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but who's next?
Captain Africa is next, and then you, and then Tom.
Thank you.
Hey, all power to the people. I'm about to say some old person
All power
stuff.
to the people.
Can y'all hear me clearly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now what I'm about to say, I guess, ties into everything, even what the brother just said, the comrade just said just now. Like one of the history books that I love the most is C.L.R. James, The Black Jacobins. Like the reason why I love that book is like it explains to you in there what revolution really is.
Which book is it, Comrade?
C.L.R. James, The Black Jacobins. It's about the Haitian Revolution, like how they actually won the revolution. And there's a quote in there, by Toussaint, and he's saying like Toussaint knew, like he knew the people he was fighting. He never had the illusion that they conferred any. No. Let me go back. It is Toussaint's supreme merit that while he saw European civilization as valuable and necessary thing, and strove to lay its foundation among the people, never had the illusion that it conferred any moral superiority. That's the institution that we're dealing with now. He knew French, British, and Spanish imperialists for the insatiable gangsters that they were. That's the society that we're in now, the government that we're in headed by Biden. That there is no oath too sacred for them to break. No crime, deception, treachery, cruelty, destruction of human life and property, which they would not commit against those who could not defend themselves, which is us, because we don't have no weapons. So it's like, I'm listening and we come at this from identity politics. It's like, at some point, those identities that they give us, that they ascribe on us, is how they separate us. And then at some point, as an American growing up, living in the system, you start to see how if you're a woman, if you're gay, if you're Black, if you're Latino, you start to see how the system oppresses you in your own unique way. And then you start to fight from that space, you start to fight. And we forget who the enemy is, who we're fighting against. These savages that have been here for hundreds and thousands of years, these elites, these oligarchs, that this money has continued to stay in their hands. And we forget that, and we go in our corner and say we fighting whatever. And we're reactionary because that's how we've been socialized to be from birth. From the first time you came out your mother, you started understanding your mother, your parents, whoever socialized you, the school you went to, the system you're part of, they made you that person that you are. Then now you try to change that, and you can't change it overnight. You become reactionary and you reflect back to it. As Panthers, we live by the 10-point program. And last week, I mean, I'm doing a quick, what you call it right here. I don't know what's the term they use, but when you're talking about another show and another show. But last week we talked about imperialism, and we talked about housing. We went through the list. And number 4, we want decent housing fit for the shelter of human beings. That's number 4 of the 10-point program. We believe that if the landlords will not give decent housing to our Black and oppressed communities, then the housing and the land should be made into cooperative so that our community, with the government aid, can build and make decent housing for its people. This government hates us. They don't care about us. If we want to save ourselves, we need to do cooperative. We need to come together as a group and build institutions to sustain ourselves. I heard the conversation earlier about how many people do we need for us to do anything like 3%, 10%. We need to build institutions. Whatever small percentage of us is around, we have to build institutions with institutional memory to carry on what we say to the next generation and build like a cooperative. That means all of us here on this live stream own the house, own the building, own whatever it is. We're all getting a piece of that pie. Why would you go to the government and ask them for anything? They have never kept their word. The government is strategically put in place to oppress you. That is why they wrote their constitution. That is why it is in place. So how do you think, like, we actually think in our mind, the struggle is going to win over their institution? How do you win over all the judges all around the country? How do you win institutions that they have erected for hundreds and thousands of years? No, I'm a sociologist by trade. I didn't go to school to make money. I went and picked a dumb, what you call it, a dumb major. Like, that's how the world look at it. Sociology, oh my God, you're going to be a sociologist, you're going to be a political science, you're not going to make no money. So that's how people looked at it. But I picked sociology to understand how society is constructed and maintained. And if you take nothing away from what I am saying, institution building is what our purpose is, because that is how they control our lives. So if we wake up tomorrow, we send our kids to their schools, we send our schools to their entertainment mediums, our kids are going to turn out and be what they want them to be. But if we organize and we come together and we understand our identity, our ascribed identity that they put on us, it's not our issue. But that imperialist, that Black mayor, that Black councilman, those Black teachers, those white, those Spanish, all these people in our communities, they work for the system that's oppressing them. So just because they look like me, they sound like me, they say colloquials like, right on, power to the people. That don't fucking mean you with me. It means you're co-opting my struggle to oppress me from the space that you're in, that the white supremacy or the social structure, this oligarchy has given you. So we want to fight back. what the chairman teaches us, Chairman Takaju, that's my chairman of our party. What he teaches us in our community is to build dual contending powers. Build your school. I don't care if it takes you 10, 15 years, you by yourself. You have to build that school that teaches something different. And from that institution, you're going to produce minds that you can reason with. I mean, like, I don't want to go on forever, but this is a great discussion. But most of the time, when I go to this place and we have this discussion, we think we got to go get policies. Ain't no fucking policy going to liberate any one of us. I mean, so even like whatever they do in Congress, whatever they do, any of them places has nothing to do with our liberation. Our liberation is going to come from us. And yeah, it's important that you young Jake, real rap, because like you can talk to people, your generation, you understand how to speak to them different than me. I'm in my 40s, I'm 43. So it's like how I talk and the music that they listen to, the shit they do, I look at them like they're retarded, like they're stupid. I mean, and I don't even want to have a conversation with them. But like, I'm being 100 here. But you, from your space, like you can have that conversation with them and it's not too foreign. I mean, because like, yo, I believe in building institutions. That's all I care about. But your age is important. I always Fred Hampton. He's still living on till this day. I mean, so it's like, yo, when I was younger, I used to want to be smart. I wanted to be the smartest person in the room. Nah, yo, hold on to that smartness. Put that smartness on your head as a craft. Because it's work, it's study. You learned that. It didn't come from nowhere. You wasn't born knowing the stuff you know. You did the work to learn that stuff. Don't be like, nah, it's what you call it? It's not the main thing. It is the thing. It is the thing. That youth is the thing. And being able to understand all these things and not wait till you're 30, in your 40s to understand them. And then like 10 years, 12 years later, it's almost too late for you to really do anything about it. Like you in your 20s, you got your whole life ahead of you. You got a lot of time to put this institution together. We put this institution together, you got to manage it and then pass them on. I mean, real talk. So that youth is big, man. And what we're doing here is big. I want everybody to understand. You could be doing anything. But we're sitting here talking about how we actually fix our communities. And how we fix them is by building institutions. That's what the book said. That's dialectic materialism. And our enemy is imperialism. We're not our enemy. Ain't no gay person my enemy. Ain't no Spanish person my enemy. Ain't no white person. I don't even care. Yo, right now, all the white people in the world, all the white men in the world could be like, yo, we're tired of white supremacy. Fuck that. We don't want white supremacy no more. It's still going to be white supremacy tomorrow because the institutions are here to enforce it. So it doesn't matter what they think. I don't care what people think. We must build our own institution. I said all power to the people.
All power to the people.
Power to the
All
people.
power to the people. All power to the people. All power.
My next.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow. Comrade Africa. Wow. Agreed. I mean, you said a lot of stuff there that I just everything you said was just amazing. I just wanted to add, as far as militarization of police, just remember that a lot of this is corporate backed. A lot of it is, including the $90 million facility in Atlanta. On backing on militarization for the past decade, PDs across the United States have been doing, including NYPD, California PD, Atlanta PD, Georgia PD. We're seeing precincts across America exchanging with the Israeli, the settler police in Israel. And they're doing exchange programs basically to teach each other how to tactically go after marginalized communities. The police, one thing about police investigating themselves that Kat had mentioned, in many other countries, including the UK, when there's police involved with a shooting or a beating, they do not investigate themselves. There's always an independent investigator that is not affiliated with police. In this country, we see press releases from police as actual research articles. They are not. Police handle all the evidence, including the police reports. How can we expect to have any confidence in what they have to say when they're trying to protect themselves at all times? Also, remember, when media is trying to divide us, all of media is owned by the 1%, all mainstream media. So if you're looking for truth in media, that will not come from mainstream media at all. In fact, media is created to divide people. It's drama, it sells, and it's the 1% that owns the media. As far as the good cop issue, let me say this. Any good cop, any cops who go in with the intent to be good or to change the system, the ones who remain good are weeded out, are beaten up, are basically forced to leave any police type of system. And, or if they don't leave, if they speak out, they're higher level lieutenants or captains, they're charged with offenses, planted evidence on them. They're basically imprisoned. So, and we have more than numerous cases of that. And also, as far as increased violence in police, let me say this: police, as many know in the Black American community, police go back to enslavement. Police, as far as 1972, were still hanging young black humans from trees. We're talking about generationally, this is not going to change in the police system. It is a huge system. So basically, good cops, there are no good cops anymore, if there ever was. They're all been weeded out. They've all been, or they've assimilated into the police system. I think that's all I have to say. And I think I said it pretty quickly, but that's about it. I mean, Comrade Africa, wow. And
I want to say something about the cops too. Even in that book that CLRJ wrote in 1938, the first thing he said that the invaders needed when they came into Haiti was police. They needed to have police to be able to keep order. Like, that's their duty, period. Like, there's no need to say there's good cops, there's bad cops. You're all pigs are pigs. A pig is a pig. Like, there's period. When you hear somebody say, "Oh, good, there's some good cops," that's their narrative that they're trying to put on us for us to buy into that goofy shit. You know, like when the Tyree Nichols thing happened, when they killed him, you know, they killed like the next day, 2 days or whatever. They fired all those police officers. Yo, you know why they fired all those police officers? Yo, the head police officer, the black woman that was the chief, yo, she came from another department where this stuff already happened already. And she didn't want the heat. So she tried to get rid of this as soon as she can. She had another unit called the Scorpion unit, or whatever unit they had in Atlanta. She got fired. And she left and she went to Mississippi and started this again. She's a pig. Pigs do what pigs do. And they hire them, they promote them because they're pigs. They serve their masters. They're no good cops, none of that. And when we say abolish the police, you have to visualize it before you can understand it. We live in a community. If we say we need to put cooperative in our community, where the community comes together to create the cooperative, which they all get resources from. They're all getting resources from that business, the house, whatever building that they have. They're all earning from it. Why do I need to steal from my own business? Why do I need police in the community if I'm not poor, if I'm not starving, if I don't have to worry about clothes, where I'm going to eat tomorrow? If you are making less than $80,000 in North New Jersey, you cannot get renting right now. You need to make more than that. This is what the real estate people are saying. So it's like, this is their form, their way of gentrifying the community, because they're going to tell you, you call them up, you say, look, I'm trying to get an apartment. They're going to say, how much do you think? Send us your taxes, whatever. And then they'll call you back. Well, we don't have no place for you. They may not even tell you don't make enough. But according to their quota, them trying to gentrify and change that society, they're not allowing people that's not making a certain amount to live here, because they know the income of the people that live here is about 30 to 35. So we're going to get rid of these people by not allowing them to get home. Like there's nobody talking about that when they talk about housing. They're not talking about these little things or the landlord forcibly kicking people out illegally, going like putting stuff on their door and illegally getting security to come kick them out instead of the sheriff department. You don't hear none of that stuff. It's like when you work on the front line for real activists, when you say you try to put this stuff, like put it to practice, these are the people that you speak to in these communities, and you hear these stories of how they've been kicked out their homes. And in no community that we've been to, that we've gone to, that we spoke to around the world, nobody said they like the police. Everybody says they hate the police. I don't care what community you go to. You want like England, go to France, go wherever. They all hate the police because the police are here to protect one class of people, and they're all pigs. And all the people that control the institution, because the mayor control the police, all these people, whether they're black, they're gay. What's her name? She's Lightfoot in Chicago. She's black, she's gay, she knocked up 2 boxes right there. Boom, bop, bop. But what is going on over there? People still getting lynched, people still in the streets. Nothing has changed. And like it goes back to the identity politics. You gotta walk away from identity politics and go into something that's dialectic. That's scientific. Because we have all the evidence here. We have the 10-point plan. We have everything here to teach us who our enemy is and who we're fighting. And we need to follow that. Because it seems to me like a lot of time, not you guys here, but a lot of time when I'm watching stuff, people say they read a book, they did this, but they don't follow what the book is saying. The book is telling you, don't trust this system. Don't trust this government. Anything they say is a lie. There are no policies that's going to liberate you. These are all in books. And we ignore them and we say like, yo, if we change maybe 1 or 2 politicians, if we do local politics, local politics is just as corrupt as national or federal. So it's like, it's pointless. Build our own institutions and we start to change things in our communities. Whatever community that you guys are at, we come there and we assist. You come here and you assist. We build a network connected with each other. This is how you build a revolution. This is how you change how things are. So if we have a cooperative now, and then like in 20 years, our children take it over, that is a revolution. You have basically changed the material conditions of the people in that space. Voting, none of this other stuff will do any of that. I'm not saying that no more because I talk too much. I'm going on.
I just want to say something real quick before I pass it to Chairman Jake, but there was last week, I think it was a situation in Providence, Rhode Island, where a landlord showed up at a duplex or whatever to illegally evict a tenant. And the tenant thought that they were being home invaded and fucking shot the landlord. And now the state of Rhode Island is pushing charges on the tenant.
And that's a liberal state right there.
Yeah.
I just want to say, notice in that situation that you just gave us, right? If in the context of a homeowner, right? Say that person owned their home, right? And this person's knocking on their door and they shoot them, right? Or trying to gain entry to their home and they shoot them. In many states, the castle doctrine applies. And in fact, you can use that as a defense, to get off on the charge of, murder, essentially. So the only distinguishing feature in that is the fact that there are property rights involved, right? So, this is what makes class crime. This is what makes class warfare, right? It was the Tom was talking about class war when he was in here a few minutes ago. That's what he's referring to, right? This property distinction, right? Where we have this small, 1-2% of the population who owns 98% of the infrastructure, right? They get to make the laws and they get to hold people accountable for misuse of that property, right? And it's not the other way around, even though it is all of society that maintains, uses, and consumes things based on the existence of that infrastructure. So, when a child starves to death, when a child is dehydrated, when a child is malnourished, when a man is brutalized by the police, when I go on and on and on, all the different ails in society, you have an existence of property relations like this, it is the victims are necessarily the people, and the perpetrators are necessarily the owners. So you know, that is only that case that you just brought up is that's only it's only, I mean, it's egregious to us, right? But in a socialist system, in a communist system, that would have been completely justified. So you know, it would be the law. You can't just break into somebody's domicile and try to, you know, do whatever you're going to do there. So, but hitting home even deeper on what Africa said here, he was talking about building dual power in the community. And on the last podcast that we had here, that was something that I hit home on. What I didn't go in depth on was the mass line, and that's something that I wanted to bring up here too. We talk about building the dual power, building the infrastructures, your liberation school, building your food program, build, you know, to the point where you get that to be that's no longer a food program. It's no longer a table on the street. This is a supply depot in the community. We got everything you need in here. You come and get it. And it gets to the point where it's no longer a cooperative system. It's almost like an anthill. It's fully autonomous, right? Think people just go out into society, get the resources they need, bring it to a central location, and equally distribute it. That's the kind of thing that we're trying to get to, right? Knowing, so even with that in mind, the goal of building the institutions, it's not just one step to, you know, to doing that. You don't just take your table out. You have to apply a method to doing that. It's called the mass line. This is where you go into the community, you concentrate the ideas of the people there. Obviously, you need to have professionals who are dedicated to this. They have to interpret these things dialectically, to use dialectical materialism to understand these conditions that you're going to get from the people. You condense that into a program, right? You figure out what's right, you figure out what's incorrect, or what is partially correct, and you develop a program and present that to the people. And a program could be, for example, the 10-point program, right? And that is almost a universal program, right? The Black Panthers, the original Black Panthers were honestly like visionary, really. They were almost prophetic in their ability to synthesize the universal problems within the community. And that's why you see all of, and it's not even an explicitly, I mean, partially, but it's not even an explicitly anti-capitalist program. The original 10-point program is almost socially democratic. These are things that should have been afforded to you under the capitalist system. These are the things that the capitalist revolutionaries promised but never fulfilled, right? Because of the profit motive. So anyway, you got your program now, right? If it's right, you can apply it, right? It's going to transform over time as the people's needs change. So you have to recycle, you do the mass line all over again, right? If it's wrong, you also go back over again, right? So it's this continuous cycle that we apply on the ground as organizers, right? I'm trying to tell people who are watching this how to actually build a survival program right now. Because I could talk about, okay, you set your table up on the corner, right? But what if it turns out that people don't need food, right? It's unlikely, right? The poor community we're talking about, right? Their needs are almost universal, right? But it may not be the case that you need to have bottled water, right? You may not live, you know, if you're not in Flint, Michigan, or some other place where, you know, the water is contaminated, that may not be the first thing you start with, right? So figuring out what's primary, figuring out what's secondary, the lists of people's needs, and you find that if you go door to door, that people have common needs and they don't realize it. But once you show them that, hey, I've surveyed 95% of the people in this neighborhood and they all agree on this specific issue, right? They realize there is a common thread, right? And some people may be out in the community spontaneously trying to solve these things, right? Maybe there's a homeless problem, right? Okay, I'm going to let this homeless man I always walk past, I'm going to let him stay a couple weeks in my house because he can't get to the shelter or something like that, right? That happens all the time. right? And people in the community doing these things spontaneously. But if these people knew each other and they had a common knowledge, the common thread, the survey done by professionals in the community, right? Presented with the program that they all agree with can solve the issue, they can be organized towards solving that issue. And they can be organized toward building an institution that is permanent in the community, that is not owned by another system. It's an alternative system. And at some point, you will need governance. At some point, you will need defense, right? And so that is the foundation for revolutionary conditions. When you have an alternative system that is in competition with the existing system. So to get there, you need to apply the mass line. So I wanted to present that as well.
Absolutely. Next we'll do Tom, since he's he made it back. And then it'll be Deputy Chairman Paul.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm having little problems with the computer here crashing on me. The basic of every strategy is answering the question, who's our friends, who's our enemies? And I think we all agree on who our friends are as far as the various ethnic groups and minority groups, gay people, so forth. On the enemies, we're not so clear. A lot of people don't realize that we have two fascist parties in America. And the Democratic Party is the original fascist party. The Republicans just made a right flank on them with the Nixon Southern campaign. They're never going to defund the police. They're never going to ease up on oppressing the people. Their job as the left flank of the fascists is to keep sucking people in with false promises, to keep them in the system, keep them voting, and keep them from building their own power base. We have to stop playing that game. We have to forget about changing the Democratic Party, because it's never going to change. From the Democratic National Committee on down, it's a fascist organization. And it's controlled by the less than 1% of the bourgeoisie that are the ruling class. We have to, like Jake was pointing out, build our own institutions, build our own base of power from the grassroots up. And only when we have developed enough strength from doing that will we be in a position to challenge them for the whole bag of peanuts. That's what I wanted to say.
Can I just say one thing that piggybacks on what Comrade Tom just said? As far as two-party system, it's an oligarchy for sure. It's basically one party. And I do tend to separate them a little bit. As far as Republican Party is fascist, I think maybe by a sliver, the Democratic Party is better, just by a sliver. But I will say this, when we're talking about the Democratic Party, let me ask you this to all of you. First of all, number one, why is the consensus in America still pro-cop 55%? Why does the Democratic Party, who labels himself as the People's Party, continue to fund police, even though they have promised to divest police, to create community programs like Comrade Jake has mentioned? The Democratic Party has said that they would do this over and over again. Why do you think they are not doing that at all? And these are just questions that I got from messages on Facebook specifically.
Can I try to answer that briefly? Because you've asked the question in a different form to Shaka, and I have to give just directly, it's because they're trying to protect property. 55% of Americans have a stake in the system. Even people who are on the lower rungs of that middle income, right, have stocks. They have property, real property that they're invested in. And they believe that criminals are a racial category. They don't see it as a class category. And so what you're getting is 55% of Americans have this view that they need cops in their community to protect them because they see no alternative, especially an easy alternative, right? And that's the work that we have to do, right? But they see no alternative. And the Democrats and Republicans see that and come from that perspective. And that is what they are catering to. They will talk, to the social justice movement. They'll talk to the revolutionaries out of one side of their mouth just to placate them, to duel their revolutionary edge, right? Mm-hmm. And out of the other mouth, assure the rest of the people that, hey, we're not doing what these people want. We're going to make sure that you got cops in your community. We know what happens when you don't have cops in your community. Wink, wink. This is the kind of, I mean, it's, in one sense, it's completely racially charged, right? In another sense, it's actually a lie. You have many alternatives, right? In fact, 95% of policing right now, due to the current digital technologies that we have, right, are obsolete. You don't need traffic cops. You have enough infrastructure to see every license plate on every street in the country. You don't need them. You don't need a cop to go to somebody's door to give them a ticket if they got your license plate running a red light. Mm-hmm. You know why? Because you have a mail system. You don't, and if you got rid of the traffic cop, you've already gotten rid of like half of policing, half of the cops, right? And this is just one way to do it. Now, obviously, that doesn't get to the root of the matter. Now, people talk about abolition all the time, but and this is the part that they missed when George Floyd protests happened, right? The George Floyd rebellion. The thing they missed was the connection to class, right? Everybody wanted to talk about how we need to reform the cops. And as some people went as far as we got to abolish the police, right? Without recognizing that we live in a capitalist society, right? A state society, right? And a state society necessitates groups of armed men who go out and defend that society. It necessitates prisons. It necessitates a whole system, an infrastructure of people, right, who can go out and enforce that system. And so if we have a set of property relationships that we have to maintain, right, and we have cops in that system, and the property relations that we are maintaining only benefit 1-2% of the entire population, right, then the cops are only ever going to work in favor of 1-2% of the population, right? And furthermore, if you wanted to abolish policing wholesale, you have to abolish the state. And so the question becomes, how do you even get there, right? And as far as we know, right, since the primitive communal era, it has not happened. The state has existed in some form. It is a proto form, or, in the modern nation state form, it has always existed, and there has always been these groups of men who go around and defend that arrangement of property. So that is the most succinct, direct way that I can answer that. And, I hope that does it some justice. So
it was great.
All power to the people. I want to thank Deputy Chairman Paul for being as patient as he's been. He's had his hand up for a while.
No problem. All great points, and I mean, I'll add on to what Jake is saying, and people that have heard me speak before will know that I take this stance of violence and death is a commodity in our communities. So of course they're going to say they will want to defund and everything else. But when you look at it, the cops have no obligation to reduce crime in the community. It's like if they reduced crime, they work themselves out of a job, right? So they're gonna always want that crime. No matter what they say, they're not there to protect anything, not even property to a point, because crime in this essence pays for them. They get their overtime. During an event in Humboldt Park, we watched the cops instigate a fight between two street tribes, because at that point, up until that point, there was very little violence or tensions within the festival. But once they saw the opportunity, we're talking maybe about 40 to 60 uniformed cops standing on a corner, watching two street tribes go at it, directing them into a crowd of women and children. And then that's when they decided to attack, when they were intermixed with the women and children at the event. And at that point, it was myself and my field marshal that put ourselves in between the women and children and the two street tribes and the cops fighting, right? And they do this because they know next year when it comes time to run this festival again, they're guaranteed overtime. They're guaranteed that money. Same thing with the politicians. The politicians will sit here and tell us they want to reduce crime. They want to, fix houselessness and all these other issues that are violence to the people. Hunger is violence to the people. Miseducation is violence to the people. All of these things they will say that they want to fix, but they know if they fix it, they don't got a platform to stand on next term. So they're going to sprinkle a little bit, make it look like they're doing something, say the same things that they know people want to hear, and then they use that fear mongering. I just saw a post from a politician running for alderman who I've had a conversation with, and he was like, yeah, I don't believe, I think we should defund the police to a point, right? He wasn't fully at defund, but he was like, I think we should defund the police. His campaign right now is calling the people that want to defund the police extremists. So I'm wondering what if they're the extremists, what about the abolish the police minded people? I guess they would probably be labeled as terrorists. And when I say they, that would include me, because I believe we should abolish the police. So if and this is the fear mongering that they use, and we see it all the time. And we know the first thing, like every genocide that I have studied in history starts with media. And I know we've talked about the system, and we know that this system isn't broken because this system is working perfect for the way that it was built. The people that built it, the mindset and the ideology of the people that built it and who was considered human at that point when it was built, it's built perfectly working for that set of people. Everybody else was a second afterthought, if that at all. And it was scraps that we were given. We were never given full rights. We were always just given scraps off the plate of the 1%, and then we fight for them. And we talk about this in the community as well. For the brown community to win, the black community has to lose something. For the black community to win, the brown community has to lose something. The one community that's not losing anything is the affluent community that already has everything. They still get their money, and that never gets touched. And I know we talked about, Comrade Tom also talked about the Democrats and the Republicans, and I don't fuck with either. Both of them have taken time in history to lynch us publicly and then condone the lynching privately, and that will continue to happen. And I hate the conversation I have to have with people, because unfortunately the black and brown community is taught that the Democrats are our savior. But only maybe about 50 years, 60 years ago, they were hosting the Democratic Convention with the KKK. But we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to acknowledge that, because then who do we vote for? The Republicans, who right now are holding the lynching ropes for us? So no, this system, like I said, is working the way that it was built. And until we demolish and tear down the system altogether, no reform, no rebuilding, no, oh, let's get more Black and brown people in positions of power, because all they do is become the same fucking oppressor that they were fighting against. They get a little bit of power, and next thing you know, everything that they stood for was just to get the votes, and then they turn on the people. So until we tear down everything from scratch, we're not going to get the liberation we want. And, what I'm probably going to say is going to cause problems, but, they say that, we see that the white supremacy groups are forming militias, but, with the proper political education, our street tribes could be our militia. And
all power to the people.
All power to the people. All power to the people.
All power
I'm
to
gonna
the
leave it at
people.
that. All power to the people.
Power to the people.
I guess the next person to have their hand up would be Jake. And then Tom, and then does anybody else want to speak after that? Just, put your hand up.
I just want to say that, there's a lack of seriousness nationwide toward the idea of revolution. You can go to any, quote unquote, revolutionary circle, protest, program, whatever it is, almost any of them in the country. And people just have a real lack of an understanding of what this is going to take. They don't understand by and large. And some of this is a privileged position. Some of this is a fear of safety. Some of this is a lack of dedication. There's a lot of different tendencies that go into it, but being afraid of violence. I mean, violence is not something to be afraid of. Violence is a tool. Violence has always been a tool, right? As long as, like I said earlier, states, societies necessitate groups of armed people, right? Groups of armed people necessarily get into violent struggles in order to maintain that system. So these are things that just happen. Okay, it's like the law of gravity, right? Violence happens, right? It's a violent universe. It's just what happens. So coming to grips with that is important, right? Accepting a certain degree of professionalism, right, toward this. If you're going to be serious about it, accepting all of it, the full degree of it. So the point that I want to make here is that, we have to take the position of, okay, are we going to be professional about this, right? Or are we not, right? And if we're not, you may as well just go be voting for the Democrats or Republicans. You may as well just go engage in the spontaneous acts of violence, pat yourself, or spontaneous acts of solidarity, and pat yourself on the back. You know what I mean? Make yourself feel good. Because that's as far as it's going to go, and that's all it's gone to, so far. Occasional riot, right? Occasional mass uprising of millions of people, but it doesn't go anywhere. And we got to think about, when did it go somewhere in other parts of the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
China, right? It went somewhere in Vietnam. It went somewhere in Russia, right? And go on, half the world, and there are universals that applied in those situations. A lot of it, most of it was particular, right? They had some particular thing. For example, in China, they had a certain amount of peasants, and they were far more numerous than they were compared to proletarian industrial workers, right? May be different in a different part of the world, and there's a particular there, right? But there are certain things that are universal, right? For example, what's your method of actually getting the ideas of these people, right? Concentrating them, coming up with a program, right? Programs are not going to be identical in every part of the world. They're not going to be identical in every state in the US, right? Given a serious situation, right? But the point is that we're drawing a line of demarcation between utopians and scientific people, right? Scientists and utopians, as far as Marxism goes, as far as You know, are we dialectical materialists, right? Or are we some form of anarchists? Are we dialectical idealists, or some other philosophical position? And these are questions that we have to, on the one hand, get people who are trying to have a revolution thinking about. They need to understand the terminology here, right? And we have to have a consensus on this, right? And if not a consensus, we have to have real social practice playing out on the ground. That is a scientific method. We can say, okay, they tried this practice over here, and we tried this practice over here. It turned out we were wrong, right? And then consolidate and go with that. You know what I mean? But some of this comes down to the networking too. You know, some people on here were talking about how we got to get people in connection with each other. A lot of groups don't know that, you know, there's people who are wanting to be professional, you know, just a couple cities over, you know, they don't even know each other. We need to get these connections built. That's, you know, before we even get to this big questions for the movement. But, you know, there's a lack of professionalism, and I think that really needs to get remedied here to solve these issues of police brutality, these issues of capitalism, poverty, all these different contradictions. So I just thought I'd put that out there.
All power to the people. So we've got Tom, and then Kama, and then Zombie. We're going on 2.5 hours now. So if anybody else, this will probably be the last, like, you know, run through of people. If anybody else has anything that they want to say before we wrap up, now would be the time to put your hand up. With that being said, go ahead, Tom.
I'll be brief. I saw a good line on Facebook not too long ago. It said, voting is the adult version of writing a letter to Santa Claus. And I think that's true. And we have to stop looking to the electoral system as anything other than, you know, mutual masturbation. It doesn't change the power structure at all. And on that, also in the last decade or so, there's been a dramatic increase in the number of people identifying with Marxism and Maoism and Stalin, and you see it all over Facebook. You know, that too can be a form of masturbation. What I want people to do is, if you're serious, quit farting around, put your boots on the ground, and help build the Panther movement. Whether it's the Black Panther Party, the White Panther Party, the Brown Berets, the Young Lords, Fury, any of the groups in the Rainbow Coalition. And if you don't fit in one of those groups, start your own, you know. But, you know, let's get this movement rolling. And then the only way to do it is to put your boots on the ground in the communities and go to work for the people on a day-to-day basis to build a revolutionary movement that's going to change the world. That's all I wanted to say.
All power to the people.
Oh, am I next?
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. As far as okay, so as far as voting, when 4-5 was in office, you saw a lot of the left, and we're not talking progressive libs, we're talking the radical left. A lot of us did come out to vote, to get out who we thought was worse than the other. As far as my question is that for anybody, as far as unifying the left, because people don't understand that even the political spectrum we're talking about, right? So as far as unifying the radical left for now or for the future, how do we do that when there's some ideological differences without putting each other down without fighting with each other. Because what I'm seeing right now is the radical left is basically fighting with each other. There doesn't seem to be like a core unified vision.
Can I take on that question? This is Chairman Shaka.
All power to the people.
Power to the people.
I think that you already see the left unified. Look at what we have in the Rainbow Coalition. We have various organizations that have agreed to a specific set of policies, and we have a statement that is universal enough to incorporate their particular grievances against the enemy system. But you will never see a holistic left, because we have to take into consideration that, like you said, there's a political spectrum. You have social democrats, you have Marxists, you have anarchists that are Marxists, anarchists that are communists. You have some of us that are communists and nationalists, but we are all on the left. But what distinguishes everyone is our political practice emanating from a correct ideological line. But I think the movement, the people, will give us a basis from which we can unify some of the left. But expecting that everyone on the left will be down with us would only set ourselves up for defeat. So I just think that we need to get out there, get organized, put boots on the ground, build base areas of social, cultural, and political power. And then out of that, we'll be able to sit down and say, this is the left, this person has joined on to the left. But expecting that from a theoretical academic standpoint is a bit misleading. All power to the people. That's all I wanted to say.
All power to the people. I just want to piggyback off that for like 5 seconds and discuss the Lenin quote about how we need unity between Marxists, not unity between Marxists and distorters of Marxism.
All power.
All power. So I think that brings us to Zombie, and then we have Comrade Fist that's going to take us out with a poem. Unless anybody else wants to speak last minute. Sorry.
I was just real quick. Well,
minute.
Oh, what was that? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Comrade.
Oh, I was just gonna say, in reference to what Jake was talking about revolution and stuff. I think we have to acknowledge that the political powers in this country and the 1% have done a very good job into manipulating this country into a position where revolution is extremely difficult, because we've got 64% of the people in this country that live paycheck to paycheck. I'm sitting and I'm watching all of these actions in France, and it is like the entire damn country, but they have free health care, and they have, they're gonna get paid whether they go to work or not. They have all of this paid time off. They have all of these social safety nets in place where they can do those things. And our government has done, that is the one thing I have to give them credit for, is that they have manipulated this entire country into a position where, in order to really get to the point where we can enact a revolution, we have to accept the fact that we are going to lose a lot of people, and we're going to have a lot of people that can't participate in that revolution because of their life circumstances. If you're a parent who lives paycheck to paycheck and doesn't even have $500 in the bank for an emergency situation, how are you going to go out and fight against a system that is keeping you right where you are and has put you there for a purpose? I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be, we talked about this a couple nights ago in a live on TikTok. It is going to be a situation where people literally are going to have to see their own family members starve. They're going to have to see their own family members be negatively affected by this system before they go, you know what? And excuse my language, you know what? Fuck it. It's time. And that's unfortunate. I mean, I think we have to figure out how to overcome all of that. And I hope to hell we can. But, you know, and like Jake said, I mean, one of the and Papo just said it too, those dual power structures, you know, but are we at a point? I mean, and I'm asking you guys this because I know how I feel about it. Are we at a point where we don't even have time to get those dual structures in place? I think we've reached a critical point, and I'm not sure we have time to get those dual structures in place before everything's going to collapse. So that was it. Thank you.
All power to the people.
I just want to respond to that really quick. You know, I'm a revolutionary optimist, you know, and it's not, I'm not putting you down or anything like that, but that's like a defeatist line. You know, I'm not of the view that we're out of time, you know, even if you know, the southern United States becomes uninhabitable within the next 15 years, we're still not out of time, right? Even if there's only a sliver of land across the globe that is temperate, right? We're still not out of time. Anywhere there's people, there is power, right? That's the Fred Hampton quote. And that will always be, as long as there are groups of humans around and power structures, there will always be ways in which we can organize people toward a better, more collective arrangement. And so, you know, and I'm also not of the view that, you know, a revolution is going to be so necessarily so devastating for the people. It could be. You could look at what happened in Vietnam, and this is a good example of heading into what I wanted to really get to. You know, you talk about you talk about, you know, what it's going to take for people to realize that they have to engage in a revolutionary situation. You know, we can bring them there, you know, but it's going to take professionals who are willing to make sacrifices, right? And I'm talking about people who are going to have to make the choice between dedication to organizing the people, and they may lose their job. They may have to lose their apartment. They may have to go from city to city, right, in a car with a couple kids. You know, this is the kind of thing that you may have to engage in if you want to be a professional at this stage. We don't have the infrastructure to support you, right? But if you take that commitment and you put that work in, right, and you can build that infrastructure, right, that is how you get to a point where, okay, I made the sacrifice for all of you, right? You got the small collective of dedicated professionals made that sacrifice for everybody else, right? They went out and built the infrastructures. They took the ideas of the people in the community and they built something for that community so that all of them can benefit. And then the next person who wants to make that commitment doesn't have to get into the situation where they're homeless, doesn't have to be in the situation where they may have to lose their job, because they're going to be sustained regardless. And that's what we need to build. And it doesn't matter if people are migrating from the southern United States up to the north, or if a nuclear war happens. It doesn't matter what happens, right? If there are human beings alive on this planet, revolution is possible. It's always possible. So that's my view. You know, I'm not defeatist about this at all. I'm confident in the relationships that people can have with one another, the collectives that they can build, you know. So
if that's all you have to say, Captain Africa is next. I just wanted to say that for the sake of time, we are going to close the floor after the people that have their hand up right now. So we have Captain Africa, Tristan, comma, Papo, and then Comrade Fist is going to take us out with a poem.
So I got yeah, yeah, I hope this is being recorded in the stream. This is the best conversation I've heard on the issues that we're going through right now on any platform I've listened to. I hope this is out where we can get this out for people to hear it. Yo, and what she said, what that comrade said a few minutes ago, I don't think it was a fetus. I think she was being realist, like how some people see reality, how they see what's going on. I don't think she tapped out. She tapped out, she would have did it. But it is our duty to show them that is not the strategy or the way to look at it. Like you said, we're happy to say where there's people. I mean, there's power. Even if there's a small sliver of land, if it's 2, 3, 4, 5 people there that understand dialectic materialism, that are ready to fight, there's power. You can make power. So like, it doesn't matter what they do. I think it's too late. I think we should have been done this like a generation ago, 2 generations ago. Like,
all power to the people.
Like Tom just said. Tom said, like, you got to get your boots on the ground. We got to go to work. This stuff is not going to happen organically. Everybody's not going to wake up tomorrow and be like, yo, we need to do this shit. That's what dual contending power is, and your duty as an activist, as a revolutionary. This shit ain't easy. You're going to have sacrifices. Right now, the landlord is trying to kick us out of our home because we're trying to build a tenant association. That shit come with it. We can't get a job in the city because we attack the political system. That's part of the shit. You got to go out of the city, go like 2, 3 cities down to try to get a job to be able to survive in this society. That's part of the shit. That's the sacrifices you make on the daily. The motherfucker push this shit forward. But you gotta build it. You gotta build the infrastructure. Like, you gotta come together and build the co-ops. Centralized capital is what makes political power. We need to centralize our capital and how we survive on this space. We need to build these bridges and work together. That's how you build the infrastructure to teach the next generation that these people are savages. You can't do that by just waiting for it to happen organically. It takes the work of revolutionaries, and that's what makes you special. So when you get off this thing tomorrow, understand that and try to put the motherfucking co-ops together. And a co-op means we own the shit. It's our shit. So like we can sustain ourselves. So if it's a mother, she's making paycheck to paycheck, like she don't have to be at all the motherfucking rallies. She don't have to, but she could be on a meeting like this. She can come to the political education class. She can start to know so she can teach her children. That's how, like, you bring them in. Those that are willing. You can't force people. Those that are willing. And you work with those people to build that infrastructure. We building it here. With our chairman in North, we're building the infrastructure. Build it where you at. Come join it, what we doing. I mean, like, find somewhere to put yourself where you're building something material. Not waiting to vote for somebody that you know is not working for you. I'm gonna shut up again. All power to the people.
All power to the people.
All power
To the people.
All right, that brings us to Tristan. Are you there, comrade?
Who's speaking right now?
Tristan.
You sound very far away.
All right, I guess we'll go with comma next, and then we'll go back to Tristan.
Yeah, as far as Comrade Africa stated, I agree. I don't think Comrade Kat is necessarily defeatist. I think she's being a little pragmatic, but at the same time, I think there's a balance. I'm probably one of a majority on the left who is looking at climate destruction. And what we're seeing is in 25 years or less, there's not going to be a way to reverse what's happening in the environment. And when I say this is that there's going to be a fight for resources. There's going to be a fight for essentials. There's going to be civil wars across the world. There's going to be neoliberal fascism happening in Europe. And they're going to take the example of America, because America is going to go completely fascist once it's already fascist. What are we saying? It's going to definitely accelerate certain ideologies of fascism. There's degrees of fascism. So I guess my biggest concern right now is I'm looking ahead to generations where I'm not going to be alive. So are my children, because of the access to social media and so much that they see as far as what they're researching now. So basically, I just wanted to make that point that climate destruction is real. What we're going to be fighting for is our human species. So taking that into consideration, I see where Comrade Kat's coming from in a lot of ways. I just wanted to say that. That's it.
All right. Papo, it's your turn.
Sorry, let me get back inside. I'm over here setting up for political education tonight in Humboldt Park. So
Hell yeah. All power to the people.
Let me get out of the streets real quick. But I know one of the comments that was said was about let me see where we were, about how do we sustain the revolution and everything. This is why we need to, make sure that we're taking over plots of land, starting to do our own community gardening, building our own infrastructures of,
Comrade Papa, we're losing your audio here.
Come back to me in just a second. Hold
on. Tristan, do you want to try again? I barely hear you.
Basically, what I was going to say is that that life under the that we could take a page from the Russian Revolution, given how awful life was under the Tsarist regime. Like, so, I'm not gonna like. I'm gonna skip this.
Take your time, brother. You good. All power to the people. You good.
I can't hear him.
Rob, now I can't hear you.
Yeah, Rob, you're
Oh shit, my mic was off. I was trying to say I see that Paul's back if he wants to
Okay, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I hear you good now.
All right, sorry about that. Yeah, I was running in, getting everything set up for political education tonight. So I know we were talking about how do we sustain something like this. And what I was saying is, some guerrilla gardening, taking over plots of land that are unoccupied and starting our own community gardens. Definitely is a step in the right direction. Also, building these depots like Jake was talking about, where we have storages of, resources, food, clothing, things that, hygiene products, medical supplies, things like that, that can go out to the community. Right now we have 2 of those operating in Humboldt Park right now, that we work out of. That's where I'm setting up at right now. But, you know, it's not too late. You know, things could definitely move pretty quickly once we're determined and once we're focused enough to have to start moving in this way. But then building networks like we have with the White Panthers, moving, you know, being able to pick up resources from them and send resources out that way. Same thing with the Brown Berets and the other groups that we work with, you know, interchanging those resources, and building a sustainable network of resources that don't depend on the state or the oppressor to operate. So that is all I have to say. But like I did want to say, you know, we do run political education in Humboldt Park every Thursday. So if anybody in Chicago is listening or watching any of these streams, definitely feel free to reach out, and I'll get you set up so that you could come in and get some political education and see where you fit in going forward.
All power to the people.
All power to the people. All power.
All power to the people.
Zen, did you want to say anything before we wrap up?
I would like to take a moment to point out that everything that we've discussed here tonight, well, that you guys have, I've mostly sat here silent because Rob and I's role tonight is mostly to facilitate this, but this makes me think of what Bell Hooks had to say in her book, Killing Rage, Ending Racism. And she was speaking to the intersectionality that this is not just an amalgam of various fights. This is all one battle. She labeled this as the fight against white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. That all of these things come to the table here. This is one massive fight. This is one revolution. You cannot end any of those problems individually without ending all of them. And that's why we can't reform this away. Our only solution at this point is that revolution, building this dual power and building the communities up where we can actually survive without the current system, without their infrastructure. We have to build our own. We have to come together. We have to recognize that human rights apply to all humans, not just, oh, well, here's this special class and that special class. No, this is a massive problem that was built to be this problem for the purpose of keeping people divided along those lines of race and gender and class, the whole 9 yards, because that is what upholds capitalism. So I would just like to say thank you to every one of you for coming on tonight and having this discussion with us, and, you know, hopefully educating the masses that are out there watching this and seeing like where we are coming to the table with this, because it has gotten to the point where we are beyond talking about just defunding or, you know, abolishing the police. That's one facet of the problem. We literally need revolution in order for people to actually survive. This system is not broken. It is operating exactly as it was fucking built to operate. It is the entire system that we need to take down.
All power to the people.
All power to the people.
Yes, all power to the people.
All power to the people.
To pick up meds at Weiss's in Allentown. So I'll grab a couple things too. And then we can finish up tomorrow, Saturday. The Weiss is here.
Tom, you loud, Tom. I don't think Tom realized we listening to your other conversation. All right, go ahead. He muted himself.
Yeah, he muted himself. That's funny.
Are we off yet or no? Sorry,
almost. Comrade Fist was going to read something to take us out, and then we'll cut the live. Comrade Fist, are you there?
Comrades.
Oh, there he is.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me well?
Loud and clear.
All power.
All power to the people. Thank you so much. It's been a long journey. I made it through and I'm back here and I'm grateful to be invited here. I want to send a Much love and a shout out to Jake motherfucking Hansberry, who's been holding it down. Comrade motherfucking Rob. Comrade motherfucking Shaka Zulu. Comrade Tom, motherfucking Big Warrior. And all the other comrades here. I'd like to start with just a little quote. Settle your quarrels. Come together. Understand the reality of our situation. Understand that fascism is already here. That people are dying who could be saved. The generations more will live poor, butchered, half lives if you fail to act. Do what must be done. Discover your humanity and your love of revolution. That was by Field Marshal Comrade George Jackson. The name of this poem is I'm Not Waiting. I wrote it in the Queensbridge Tech Lab and finished it across the street at the Floating Hospital on July 7th. Listen up, motherfuckers. I'm not waiting. I'm not weighing in. I'm not eating weighing curds with Mr. Puffett. I'm not eating turds. I'm not eating my words. Have you heard? I'm not waiting for buy-in. I'm not waiting for consensus. I'm not waiting for Mr. President to announce the truth has been revealed. I'm not waiting for court proceedings or for the sentence. I'm not waiting for the commander to give the order on a fight now and tomorrow and every day above ground. Justice for my daughter. Justice for their moms. Justice for my moms. Justice for my pops. I'm not waiting for the bots or the cops or the bomb to drop when Funk Flex premieres it. A new exclusive. Breaking news, the documentary or the docudrama. Front page headline with a caption that reads, "The truth is out and the slaves will all be freed." I'm not waiting, but I'm patient. I could kill, I could die. I could cry, but I could die, but I'm not waiting. I can't wait to get it on, but I don't know where it is. I'm looking and searching, bleeding and hurting. If not for me, then for me and the kids. If not for them, then for all the slaves. I awake every day with the ravishing need for truth and justice, like a wolf who needs meat, a vampire who needs blood. If I don't feed, I could die, but I gotta try. No, I can't just try. I gotta do. What else is there? Because I can't wait. But I gotta be patient and I gotta do. Because justice ain't coming yesterday, a lot of yesterdays. And justice may not come tomorrow or a lot of tomorrows. But I can't wait. But I may have to wait. So I gotta do what I can to defend myself and my children. Do what I can to defend my hood in this building. Do what I can to defend my people. Do what I can to expose this evil, like a flock of pigeons versus mighty, mighty eagle. We need Ice Cube and injections that's...
My God.
Is he still here?
Yeah.
Wow.
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 No, I'm not done. I'm not
Come on,
done.
come
My
on,
phone
come
just
on.
cut out. Give me a chance. Give me a chance.
Come on, brother. Come
We
on.
need
Yes.
Ice Cube and them injections that's lethal for these regals who claim lying and using, neglecting and abusing the poor whores who have no mores. It's not right, but it's not illegal. All power to the people. I can't wait to get it on. Ooh, I can't wait to get it on like a red man, like a man, a father, a lover. I ain't standing by and watching them rip my family apart. I'm going in. I'm going in. I'm going in for the kill. You ever had wolf heart in a taco? Get the cilantro from Papo. You ever drank vampire blood? Tastes like sangria, mamma mia, mwah. I got Satan by the neck and he's snitching on Hell's Kitchen. I got Satan by the neck and he's snitching on Hell's Kitchen. In this climax, the final act of trickery, he blowing up his own spots. So hickory, dickory, stickery, niggery, doc. The rat in the hat ran out of time on the doomsday clock. And I can't wait for vindication or for salvation. For you to love me, for you to forgive me, or for reparations. They said it could take generations. I can't wait for your top models to come out on the screen and announce that it is true, or your top minds to pass out awards and money because of what they've discovered and been able to prove. You know how they do. I can't wait for a judge to rule justice, for a politician to propose a law, or for a legislature or parliament to pass it. Because I'm out here, my children out here, my people out here, and we getting our ass kicked daily. I can't wait for y'all to vote, to debate. I can't wait for y'all to open your hearts and minds and see, remove those moats and planks crab caked on your eyes. I can't wait to breathe. I'm not waiting for a grant, for approval, for y'all to crown your next chief or champ. I'm not waiting for a wife or for my children to grow up one day, show up and say, you were right all along, Bobby, I love you. I'm not waiting for a gang society or army to show up or the cavalry to say, we heard your cries, we heard your pleas, we heard your prayers. Now you're free. I'm not waiting, I can't wait. I'm not waiting, I can't wait. I'm not waiting, I can't wait. I'm not waiting, I can't wait.
Wow.
All power.
Wow.
Oh my God.
I don't know what to say. Wow. He snapped. He snapped. Wow. That was fire, brother. Oh, man.
That
wow.
was fire.
I'm speechless too, comrade. Wow.
I got tears.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much for having me and allowing me to perform the work that this movement helped inspire.
All power.
All power to the
All
people.
power. All power.
All right. Well, yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. I'm gonna cut the live stream now. Thank you all for joining us. The people in the Zoom room, if you want to stay here and talk for a few more minutes before we,
5 minutes.
carry on with our night, that'd be great. For everybody watching, thank you for joining us tonight. And like if you like the conversation that we had tonight, make sure to share it with your circles. And hopefully this isn't the last time that we do something like this. Hopefully this is the beginning of, doing something like this regularly. This is without a doubt the best conversation that we've ever, hosted on our show. So I'm really, really humbled by that as well. So thank you all for participating.
No, thank you, brother. We appreciate you too for organizing it.
Oh yeah.
Power to the people.
All of you are absolutely welcome to come back and join us to do this again. Let's talk and figure out, we can schedule these a couple times a month, because this conversation definitely needs to continue. We need to continue waking people the fuck up to the problems that we are really facing and solutions to actually address those. So thank you all for bringing your hearts, your minds, your souls to the table today. Please join us again.
Thank you. Thank you for organizing it too. All power to the people, comrades. And
all power, Chairman. Thank you.
all power.